Good afternoon, everyone. I am Karen Lynn, and I work with Partners for Education, which is one of the co-sponsors for today's event. And so we want to welcome you to Vroom Partnerships to Promote Brain Development in Young Children. And we have 15 seconds before we're supposed to start. So we have everyone, I think everyone is now, who's waiting is now admitted. So again, welcome. And I am going to turn this over to Lindsay Lockman Doherty, who is going to be our speaker today. Lindsay is a senior specialist with Vroom, the Vroom Project with Save the Children. And she is one more person there. She is going to be presenting some information to you guys. And at the end of the session, I will paste a link to the closing plenary in the chat box at the end. So when you guys, if you want to copy that as we're going through as we get closer to the end of the session. So Lindsay, it's all yours.
Well, welcome everyone, and I'm awfully excited to be with you today and to have a moment to introduce Vroom to you all. So for today, we'll do kind of a quick introduction of what is Vroom. We'll look at some of the key resources that are available, and then kind of delve into Save the Children, how we have kind of integrated this initiative into our programming and community-wide efforts, and then really hone in on opportunities for partnerships with our library providers and the opportunity to really integrate Vroom into library spaces and programming. So first, when we think about what is Vroom, Vroom is, as I mentioned, initiative. It's now going international. It's supported by the Bezos Family Foundation, and it's really an effort to take the remarkable knowledge base that we have now through neuroscience and early childhood development about the understanding of how development occurs and the rapid and really critical development that happens in those first 5 years of life, and to make that science and understanding accessible to parents and caregivers, the people who have the greatest opportunity to really positively impact children's development, and to make sure that they are empowered and really equipped with this knowledge and resources to know what they can do within everyday moments and routines to really foster that strong development and learning. So the initiative has started by really kind of distilling down these 3 key scientific principles. And by developing a set of over 1,000 activities, moments that parents and caregivers can be spending together, and really bringing to life these 3 principles. So it's positive adult-child interaction, back and forth interactions, that serve and return, and opportunities to really develop executive function skills. So this is where we look to the science to really understand that early childhood development does not happen kind of in a vacuum, in isolation. It occurs within that environment of relationships. And that children are active participants in their development. They are not sponges that just sit passively and soak up information and knowledge from adults in their life, that they actively help construct their understanding, and that those neural connections happen when we're engaged and we're in relationships with children. And so these 3 scientific principles then are shared with families and caregivers. This is the Vroom brain building basics. It's sort of these active ingredients that you can think about of how you take a moment you're sharing with a child. You have an adult, a caregiver, and a child in a room. And through these actions is where that development occurs. And so the brain building basics are look, take turns, chat, stretch, and follow. And this is really making that serve and return, back and forth interactions, the relationship building more tangible, that parents and caregivers can see the opportunity. Look is when you are sharing that eye gaze with your child, you're noticing what's caught their attention, what they're really interested in. You're taking turns and really making it an active moment between the adult and caregiver. Those opportunities to chat, to be singing and talking, describing what's happening around you, building up children's understanding of the world and themselves. stretch is those opportunities to ask kind of those open-ended questions around, why and what do you think we should do next, and why do you think that happened? And really following children's lead, letting them recognizing when they initiate that they want to engage in a certain way or learn about something or explore something, and really supporting that moment. And all of this is then really developing those executive function skills that we mentioned before, the kind of that how that learning occurs. So we might have different developmental domains we're thinking about with early childhood development. We want science knowledge and math and language and literacy. That's kind of the what they will be learning, but the how they learn it is through executive function skills, that ability to focus, to have self-initiated learning, to be able to kind of weed out distractions that are occurring and stay focused on a goal, but to also think flexibly, that as new information comes in that we can be responding. So all those types of skills are really creating that strong foundation for all later learning that will happen throughout a lifetime. So another kind of key point of the initiative is the values of Vroom. And so here on the left side is so really that commitment to be positive and empowering for parents and caregivers, to really help build up that self-efficacy. These messages here you see of you already have what it takes, that all caregivers and adults have the ability to be brain builders, to really support these brain building moments, to really ensure that the science is, that we're leading with the science, that parents and caregivers will say, I want to know why. I want to know how this development is occurring. I want to know how I can contribute to that. And I want to have access to that information, but I want it to be attainable and accessible. It can't be so daunting, or this list of all the things I'm not already doing or not doing well enough. I want it to meet me where I already am and really celebrate what I do when I do well, but empower and encourage me in new ways. And so these values really get lived out within the kind of key resource of the initiative, which is the Vroom Tips. So as mentioned, there's over 1,000 of these moments, these activities that a parent and caregiver can be spending together. So this example is called Paint the Garden. And each Vroom tip is designed, there's a recommended age. So this one is ages 3 to 4. The tips will range from 0 to 1 all the way to 4 to 5-year-olds. And with each tip comes the brainy background. And this is, I think, my favorite part of the resources. This is where parents and caregivers get access to that kind of tangible, accessible science. And they know the why. So here's an activity we can do together, but here's why I would be doing that activity. Here's the areas of development it promotes and the skills that it's building. So this example, I think a lot about during the pandemic, the amount of time that children and families are spending outdoors. They're going on walks. I know my family and myself, we've gone on more walks around our neighborhood than ever before. And so this tip just kind of suggests take a paintbrush and an empty container of water and let children paint the flowers and the leaves as they go. And it's this opportunity to talk about everything you're observing around you, to be thinking about textures and colors and shapes and living creatures, and really to be having joy and having fun in that moment. And then the brainy background is where we're really talking and explaining the scientific inquiry that's happening during this moment, observing and describing what we're seeing around us, developing an appreciation for nature, but it's also this opportunity to be bonding and to be really building up that relationship, having a special time together. So this is just one example of a Vroom tip. And there's many ways that parents and caregivers can be connected with these activities. So there is an app that's available. If you go to the App Store right now, you can download it for free. There's no in-app purchase options. There's no advertising. It is really an effort to make the science, this set of resources, as accessible as possible to families. There's a text message option. So here, you can text 48258. And that will connect you through tips through a text format, or families and caregivers can go online. So these resources, again, are free, publicly available. Many of the resources online are as PDFs. They can just be downloaded, printed, or shared virtually with families. And the way that those 1,000 different activities are categorized, so I mentioned it's categorized by age, but it's also by these different either moments in the day, these routines, things that families are already doing together, or it is organized by those brain building basics. If you're thinking about, okay, I know I need to follow my child's lead, but what does that look like? How do I do that? It becomes very explicit and simple within these different activities. So parents and caregivers, when they or professionals, when you sign up and you create an account, you can add children to your account, and so you would say their age, and it will give you activities that are then developmentally aligned with their age, but also you can indicate the types of activities or moments within your daily routine you want to really be receiving information, and you can save favorites. So I think that's been a wonderful feature for those of you that work with young children, knowing that desire to repeat activities over and over and how important that can be for their learning. This makes it really simple to go back and to find the activities that you really enjoyed doing together and to be able to do them again. So as mentioned, there's a website, so vroom.org, and when you go there, there's again those tips that we just looked at. There's PDFs of them that can be printed out. There's resources that are available to help inform others about Vroom and to connect them. So the two examples here are, one is a flyer of those 5 brain building basics. It's in English and Spanish. It's a double-sided material. And it will also connect families to the digital resources. So one that we've really loved, kind of at the top you can see Vroom has a Facebook account and Instagram, and on the YouTube channel, there's these short 1-minute videos that show one of those tips in action. So it'll take the kind of printed Vroom tip and it will show a family in that moment. And we have found those to be really quick and fun, inspiring ways to see a family doing an activity, having such a good time. And we found that to be something that then really piques families' interest and often is what kind of wants them to connect to access these resources themselves. And then one last resource that I'll mention from the Bezos Family Foundation is their Mind in the Making initiative is kind of a sister initiative to Vroom, and it as well is really designed to make science accessible to families and caregivers. It's very focused on building those executive function skills. And so here's a set of resources, and the website is at the bottom. It's called Skill Building Book Tips. So they've taken popular children's titles. This one example is The Snowy Day. And it, again, makes that moment you're sharing in reading that book together. It provides caregivers with activities they could be doing. So you could see here there's 2 different activities. And it also, like the brainy background, is describing what is the skill that you're developing by doing that activity together. And it's across the different age bands, and similar to Vroom, it's all free and can be downloaded and shared with families. So now we'll spend a little bit of time just talking about the ways that Save the Children has really integrated Vroom within our work. So we really thought about what are the different programs we have that are already in serving families with young children. What are the ways that we can really integrate these resources within? So these first 2 pictures, one is one of our home visitors. She's actually showing a family how to connect to Vroom through the app. Another is they took one of the tips. It's a cup tower tip, and they did it together during the home visit. And so it's an activity where families are stacking up just cups, and they're talking about like how high can you make it and what shapes can you make it in, and then they knock it down, what happens? So they did that actually together. And so there's been ways that we've really aligned it with the curriculum of our programs, our early childhood programs. And this has been an additional resource we can just layer on and support families with. We've also used it within sort of our community-wide efforts. So this picture at the bottom is a family engagement event that happened in a community in California. They themed it as a circus, but every activity station was actually a Vroom tip, and they printed them off. They just sort of blew them up and posted them on the tables and themed it around a circus, but it was these very simple interactions that families were doing, and they saw how they could do those same things at home. And this has really then been a key resource in our efforts to create a community-wide commitment to early learning, that all different types of shared spaces and places in communities are able to be engaged as partners in early learning, and ways to think about the times when families already come together to celebrate community traditions, cultural practices, that those are opportunities to really be embedding and highlighting those brain building moments. So one last resource that I'll share is Save the Children. During the pandemic, we've created different activity calendars. Again, the website is provided and similarly free, publicly available. They can be downloaded. They began as weekly activity calendars and now are offered monthly. And you can see in this one example for December, the second page is Vroom tips that are provided. And so it just is a way that we've kind of continued to integrate these into resources and materials that we were already creating. And just the response that we've had when we've asked our families about Vroom and kind of their experiences in interacting has just been overwhelmingly positive and has really spoken back the values of the initiative. So we hear parents and caregivers say, I read a tip and I realized I already do that. I've been doing that for years. I may have not really understood exactly the way that it was impacting my child's development, but I feel very affirmed in what I've been doing. Others that'll respond and say, oh my gosh, there's like moments that were such challenging times for us as a family, trying to get out the door or getting dressed or standing in a line. And I now see that these are moments that can be about learning. And the more my child is engaged, the more fun we have in those moments. So it's really been remarkable. And we've also seen our parents and caregivers really be empowered to see themselves not only as brain builders, but also advocates for early childhood. And so because Vroom is free and publicly available, they will take it to their friends and their neighbors and the businesses that they go to and say, hey, you could engage families in a Vroom tip while they're at your restaurant, sitting at the table, or while they're at the laundromat. And it's been just a really incredible way to really celebrate our parents and caregivers and then equip them to really make an impact in their community. And so when we think about our partnerships with libraries, there's been countless opportunities to really utilize and leverage these materials. So we had begun with our partners to think about what are the programs, the opportunities where families are already coming together into a library, and ways that we can really layer this on as an extra support and resource. So story hours has been a great place. We've also begun hosting additional parent-child groups in library spaces where families regularly come together and are really then it's provided wonderful ways we can connect them with Vroom. We can really think about those preferences. Do they have access to a phone in our communities that are really challenged by digital barriers? Text messaging option has been wonderful. And for a number, printing the tips is the most accessible and the way they really prefer to get the resources. There's also a number of languages that are available, so we're able to really tailor how families are connected. Similarly, able to model those activities, do them together, speak back those empowering messages, and really label the brain building basics in action. So to highlight to a caregiver, oh my gosh, did you see how you really took let your child take the lead, or the ways that you were chatting, or you noticed what they were really interested in, has been very empowering. And to really allow caregivers to reflect, they've written their own Vroom tips, they've shared with each other ones they've loved, and it's been just a really exciting way for them to connect and to build up their own kind of confidence as parents and caregivers. When we think about also those times when families are coming together in library spaces, there's opportunities to think about even some of the functional spaces. This is a picture of a drinking fountain, and as families pause to use the drinking fountain, there can be a Vroom tip posted. While they're checking out resources, they can be introduced or they could be provided a Vroom tip to take with them. We've done in-person events with libraries really focused on literacy development, celebrating reading. This picture is of an event during Read Across America Week in South Carolina, and they themed their whole event around Dr. Seuss books and then paired Vroom tips. So there was one paired with Socks on Fox, and it was a laundry tip. So children are engaged to sort socks with their caregiver, and then they would change the categories. Well, first we match them. Now let's do them by size. Now let's do them by color. And that flexible thinking is one tip that was really popular at that event. And then also during the pandemic through remote events, libraries have been wonderful partners in connecting families. They stay in their car and we'll drive through, and they will be engaged in literacy activities or parent-child activities, and then connected as well with Vroom resources. So here's a few examples of tips that could just be printed and posted. So one on diapering, a moment that families spend repeatedly with really young children, a moment they spend together that can now be really highlighted as a great opportunity to support early learning. One is a waiting strategies tip. So while they're waiting in line, here's an activity you can do together. Card clap off is one that could be provided to them, and here's an opportunity while you're driving home from the library. Other opportunities are really thinking about the ways that we can equip families with information and resources while they're at home. And during the pandemic, we've really shifted a lot of that programming I described earlier to virtual. So we have places where they've taken their story hours, they're now virtual, and they're continuing to pair them with Vroom tips. So the one example here on the right, one of our home visitors in California, she read Stick and Stone, and she paired it with a Vroom tip called Nature Scavenger Hunt. And she really encouraged that interaction with her program participants, saying, okay, but, listen, I'm going to read this story. Here's a Vroom tip. And, please speak back, post pictures about what you found on your nature scavenger hunt or how you enjoyed that moment as a family. They've also done Vroom tip demonstration videos where they're kind of like those ones on the YouTube channel, but it's a familiar face. It's in a community setting, but they'll actually just demonstrate one of those activities for families. And it's been really empowering for them to see the faces they know, familiar places in our community, and really see themselves as brain builders and their own community spaces as opportunities to promote learning. And then book drives and distributions, kind of building up home libraries with families. Vroom information and tips have been paired there as well. So for the last, this is just an example when we talked about those tip collections. There's ones that are really tailored for moments families are spending at home. So there's one set is called Calm and Connect, another is Routines at Home. These on the website can just be printed out as PDFs and again, shared with families. And then other opportunities we've had with library partners where we've really been focused on opportunities to bring early learning out into the community as much as possible. So there's been communities where local parades are the time where everyone in the community comes out and they celebrate. And so we've had floats that have been, this is actually a float about brain building basics and about a new reading corner that was set up in a community space. And so they were highlighting that at a town parade. We've had libraries that have hosted trainings who are very similar to this. They've done kind of quick introduction of what is Vroom, and because it's free and publicly available, they've trained parents, they've trained other daycare providers or other librarians to use it, and has provided professional development opportunities for a lot of our partner staff to be able to go out and lead these very just kind of simple and accessible trainings. They've done story walks out in the community with library partners, or these pop-up activity stations, just thinking about what are those spaces where families are already going, a local restaurant, laundromat, the opening day of a town lake, and they'll set up the activity station again to just allow families the opportunity to experience these moments and then get connected with the resources. So kind of for next steps, here is just again, if you're interested, the website, when you go to vroom.org, there's a For Professionals section and then tools and resources. that's where you get to all of those PDFs, links to the videos, other resources. But you can kind of play around, sign up for the text messaging yourself and just sort of experience what it's like. And then opportunities to think about how you might share resources with families in your community, in your library patron. So I think I can pause there and we'll just check in to see if anyone has any questions. I would be happy to answer them either in the chat box or you can come off mute